So it looks like you guys really want a part 2, huh? Well, who am I to say no? With all the diversity MvM provides and the amount of unique intricacies being modified, there is a lot to talk about. And while we could do a whole movie's worth of segments, I'd rather retain what little of my sanity still remains. So I think a teensy-weensy 12-minute long addendum is sufficient enough. No need for any more elaboration, you've heard it all in part 1 already. Let's just get started. There's been this long-standing cliche amongst the TF2 community that the Demo Man is the only class that pretty much has 2 primary weapons. And that's a reasonable claim. The stickies and grenades may blow shit up in different ways, but the gap that separates their offensive capabilities is far thinner than one would expect. It goes without saying that this makes the Demo one of, if not the best generalist class in PvP. But for man versus machine, it becomes very apparent that this supposed blessing is more of a curse. Upgrades don't transfer across every weapon in a player's kit, and the vast majority of the time, this poses no issue whatsoever. The scout ignores his bat, the heavy ignores his shotgun, the spy ignores his revolver, no one really cares. But for the Demo, he's forced to make a tough choice on where to invest. Okay, well, it's not that tough. The sticky launcher has been the widespread, most practical option for years, to the point where if you ever see someone without sticky bomb launcher upgrades, faulty muscle memory is usually the culprit. But occasionally, you'll find yourself a Demo player who fully commits to the grenade grind set. And it's not that bad. The Pipe Demo is a rather unusual case, in that of every projectile-based class in the game, he reigns supreme in the realms of fastest weapon firing speed and damage on direct hit. 2 paramount categories for man versus machine. But he's also an unusual case because holy fuck is he expensive! The damage upgrades increase less yet cost more, the pipes churn through your reserve like crazy, making ammo capacity a near must-have, and the grenade launcher's innately faster firing rate cooked into its baseline means he's reliant on clip size upgrades to get the most out of crit canteens. You never really finish getting your essential upgrades as a pipe Demo, making him pretty sluggish to play on the early waves when the credit pool is more of a credit puddle. However, in the late game, Pipe Demo can be some of the most fun you can have playing man versus machine. Yeah, you may not have as many resistances as your teammates, but I'll swallow that pill if it means mine are stronger. The fire rate is exceptional, the burst damage is godlike, and the crowd control ain't too shabby either. You get a lot of power to play with. But remember, you still have responsibilities. You should still place down sticky traps and take care of the medics whenever they show up, or you can fuck around with the sticky jumper while throwing that chore onto somebody else. Of course, I, being the most courteous team player amongst us all, have definitely never done that, not even once. The minigun is one of the most powerful weapons in the game, and in man vs machine, it's better than ever. You get the insane damage output with the non-existent downtime, but in stark contrast to what you'll see in casual, the heavy is provided a near endless amount of ramp-up damage. And if you trade all of that away, you get the boxing heavy, TF2's very own neglected child. I mean, come on. Big Brother Demo Knight gets damage upgrades with crits on kill. Why doesn't the heavy get the same treatment? Well, because he kind of already does. The killer gloves of boxing give you the same chain-killing feats as the Demo Knight, and the stake does increase your melee efficiency when compared to a non-crit boosted Scotsman, but in spite of that, it just doesn't compare. The slower movement speed on the heavy, slower attack speed on the KGB, and added damage vulnerability of consuming the stake makes a dedicated boxing heavy a far worse option to run. But unlike the Demo Knight, elements of this subclass have niche, yet effective use cases within the heavy's standard game plan, those being on Uber-medic pairs and tanks. Because the heavy is unable to shoot Uber medics without them going invincible, the KGB's ability to one-shot them is put on full display. When they're the focal threat on the field, Mike Tyson will do more damage than John Rambo ever could. Likewise with the tanks, and this is something that many people are completely unaware of. The Heavy's minigun has a 75% damage penalty towards tanks, meaning if we eat the steak, swap the boxing gloves for the bear claws, max out the attack speed, and start going ham, this is the Heavy's best tank busting strategy for the entire game. And that's what's so cool about the boxing Heavy. He might be slow, short-ranged, and surprisingly vulnerable, but he's one of the only subclasses that has moments where he's undeniably better than the standard method of playing. And while those situations might be more rare than the fat-infested ribeye he's consuming, it's hard for any other subclass to hold that crown. In the same way that the Heavy is TF2's shiny poster child, the Fat Scout is perhaps the single most well-known subclass of them all. The name alone doesn't leave much to the imagination, but when on the battlefield, you'd probably hope for the opposite. I think it's fair to say that in Man vs. Machine, shotguns don't have the best of reputations. Not only are they eons away from the viability line, but they're debatably the worst in slot option for every single class that they're equipped by. So the subclass that's centered entirely around using them seems like a concept that would be dead on arrival. Maybe. The Fat Scout's defining weakness is, well, but really ask yourself, why is this such a hindrance? Well, in casual, you're easier to run away from, easier to headshot, and easier to whittle down from a distance. All valid and consistently exploited drawbacks. But in MvM, the Fat Scout seldom feels the brunt of his ball and chain. The robots don't zone you out, they never retreat, and the sniper bots can't headshot you for critical damage. In this respect, the Fat Scout's biggest drawbacks are all but eliminated, bringing the class's versatility to an all-time high. But with Valve, everything comes at a cost, and for the Fat Scout, it's a pretty hefty one. Bullet-based classes typically specialize in strong single-target damage, access to team-wide utilities, or both. And the Fat Scout comes nowhere close to either of them. Sure, barring the grapple hook pandemonium of manpower mode, the Heavy is granted the most amount of flexibility he can possibly achieve within the game. But is that really worth it when, compared to the minigun, you're running at 20% capacity? For fuck's sake, at least make it 40. But you know, despite what should be the biggest turnoff of any subclass in the game, I still think Fat Scout's a lot of fun. Not needing to constantly stay revved means you're able to achieve the full effect of speed upgrades without constant bottlenecking, and you're much less of a sitting duck when approached by a barrage of spam. But if the dilemma is cheating death versus pumping meters, I'm gonna have to side with Danzo on this one. The Fat Scout won't radically change the tides of battle, and realistically, you're throwing away a team slot by choosing to play him. But if you're clearing house anyways, who really gives a shit? Oh boy, the Huntsman Sniper. This'll bring back some flashbacks. This weapon has a special story to it, and it's one that many a high tour would like to forget. It all started on one illustrious April 30th afternoon, where Soundsmith would drop a video of him playing Man vs. Machine with, you guessed it, the Huntsman. Little did anyone expect that this would be the catalyst for so many newbies picking up archery. Now, I'd be a bit of a hypocrite to lambaste people for using unoptimal strategies they found in a YouTube video, but every day my hatred towards the term influencer grows ever more strongly. Anyone who played MvM around the release of this video remembers the feeling quite well. Oh great, we have a sniper to deal with the medics. Oh wait, never mind. He's a huntsman. Over and over and over again. Despite the fact that this video was made in contrast to a previous one in which he used a broken item, many uninformed viewers took this video as confirmation that the Huntsman was a hidden boss of a weapon. But allow me to take an arrow to that knee-jerk reaction for a moment. The Huntsman is one of, if not the worst sniper weapon in Man vs. Machine. Almost the entirety of Sniper's god tier status comes down to explosive headshots, and how many of them are regularly put out over the course of a game. The Huntsman is the only primary in which they are inaccessible, trading it for a subpar bleed upgrade alongside a couple of others that don't even fucking work. But if we put aside Valve's incompetence, there is a lot of uniqueness to be found here. The Huntsman arrow is the only projectile in the game to be granted a penetration upgrade, which, when combined with the bleed, is pure hit sound heaven. Blowing through 15 robots with a single arrow is a kind of feeling that very few things can replicate. I would go so far to say that it's the most satisfying feeling in all of TF2. But you'd be a fool to think that weapons from the Neolithic era could ever contend with high-tech rifles perched onto a god spot. And that's really the problem. The added perks of the bow did not warrant the removal of explosive headshot. And in the end, not only did it harshly kneecap the sniper's AoE potential, but made him often unable to fulfill the role he's commonly chosen for: killing uber medics. The meaty sound effects overclocking the dopamine receptors will never get old to me. But we have to be objective here. The Huntsman Sniper got the short end of the stick. And of all the subclasses in the game, this one hurts the hardest. Anytime, Valve. Come on. You know what they say about ending things on a high note? Well, we're not doing that here. Throughout every segment, I've tried my best to list the pros and cons of each individual subclass, but it's kind of hard to do that here when one end of that equation is stuck in Narnia. MvM provides a universal nerf to every playstyle in the game. Not a single weapon was designed to take on this many enemies at once. Recognizing this, Valve made upgrades the defining mechanic of the game mode, allowing for the increased threat level to be applicably matched. And what does the Trollger get? Well, that's just fucking great. Trollger already wasn't all that strong to begin with, but if you're gonna throw him into a mosh pit of sentient scrap metal, you have to give him something to work his way through it. That just isn't the case. Jumping in for a market garden requires so much precision, so much positional awareness, so much risk. And for what? To do less damage than a single rocket? Like, have any of you ever thrown rocks at seagulls? Okay, well, maybe you weren't a psychopathic child like I was, but if you were, you know the feeling. Missing 99% of the time, the constant fear of getting shit on, everyone within a 100-meter radius wanting you to fuck off. Well, that's the Trollger. And in a weird way, that actually makes him the most useful subclass of them all. It's a makeshift vibe check for a game mode that desperately needed one. Is your team so unbelievably laid back and chill that playing Trollger right from the jump doesn't faze anybody? Or is their hatred of sandbagging so high that even a last wave pick is deemed unacceptable? I mean, come on guys. Hamlet, Wave 7, really? The Trollger might have almost nothing going for him gameplay-wise, at least until he gets the bright idea to attach a grenade to his shovel. But in a game like MvM, sometimes being the worst subclass imaginable still provides an unparalleled benefit. And personally, I wouldn't have it any other way.